Dry ice. A well-known influencer named Ekaterina Didenko was getting ready to celebrate her 29th birthday. Just a few years earlier, she had graduated from medical school, earning her credentials as a pharmacist. But rather than working in a pharmacy, Ekaterina took a different path, one that led her straight to social media. She used her scientific background to start a blog, offering tips for homemade remedies that, according to her, could help people avoid trips to the pharmacy. It was a controversial niche, to say the least. Many experts criticized her advice as potentially dangerous or misleading, but it didn't stop her rise. By early 2020, she had built a massive audience, more than 1 million followers across Instagram and other platforms. And with her birthday approaching on February 28th, she was ready to put on a party that her fans and her followers wouldn't forget. Helping her organize the celebration was her husband, Valentin Didenko. He had a surprise in mind, something he called a steam show. The party venue had a private indoor pool, and Valentin, inspired by a popular online trend at the time, thought he'd create a theatrical effect by dumping dry ice into the water. When dry ice hits water, it instantly creates a thick, rolling fog, visually dramatic, eerie, and perfect for social media. So, as the evening unfolded, guests laughed, danced, and filmed the night away. Then, Valentin invited everyone to the pool area. He handed out goggles and gowns, hyping the big reveal. And then, in front of dozens of phones and cameras, he dumped an entire box of dry ice into the pool.
Oh my God!
Oh my God, Валя, you're crazy!
Материал только что обновленный. Газообразное состояние!
The reaction was immediate. The water vanished under a dense, white mist. The room filled with fog. Everyone gasped. It was the moment he and Ekaterina had planned. The spectacle. Valentin, smiling, even dived into the clouded water, disappearing completely into the haze.
Ёб твою налево!
But what no one realized in that moment was that this wasn't just fog. It was carbon dioxide gas, produced in large, concentrated amounts as the dry ice reacted with the water. Carbon dioxide, in this form, is highly toxic. In an enclosed space, it displaces oxygen, and breathing it in can quickly lead to dizziness, loss of consciousness, and eventually suffocation. To make the effect more intense, Valentin had reportedly closed the doors to the pool room, trapping the gas inside. There was almost no ventilation. The CO2 levels quickly became not just dangerous, but lethal. Valentin surfaced only once after diving in. The crowd, still cheering, thought he was playing along, splashing, laughing, putting on a show. But below the water, his lungs were filling with fluid. And on the surface, he was gasping for air that wasn't there. He was drowning and suffocating at the same time. Meanwhile, Ekaterina turned the camera on herself, still smiling, still recording. Behind her, guests continued filming, unaware that her husband was dying at the bottom of the pool. For a few surreal moments, it was exactly the performance they had envisioned, but the illusion shattered quickly. As the fog settled, guests began to feel strange. Shortness of breath, sharp pain, burning in their lungs. Some started to collapse. Others complained of chemical burns across their skin. The room was evacuated in a panic, but it was too late. 3 people never made it out: Natalia Monakova, Yuri Alfarov, and Valentin Didenko. All 3 were found at the bottom of the pool. All 3 had died from a toxic mix of CO2 exposure and drowning. What was meant to be a milestone birthday for Ekaterina ended with her becoming a widow. And while the footage from that night was already hard to watch, it was what happened afterward that many found even more unsettling. Ekaterina began vlogging her experience, from the hospital to her moments of grief.
Нахожусь под дверями реанимации. Кто умер, я не знаю. Валя в реанимации находится, не знаю, в каком состоянии. Вали больше нет с нами. Еще Наташа и Юля.
She posted videos detailing her husband's death, her own hospital stay, and her emotional reactions. Some viewers were sympathetic, but many felt uneasy, accusing her of exploiting the tragedy to gain attention and followers. And they had questions. Big ones. Why hadn't someone with a medical background understood the risks of using dry ice in a confined space? Why hadn't she, of all people, known better? Russian authorities launched an investigation, even considering negligent manslaughter charges. But to date, no one has been held accountable. Then, just 5 months later, Ekaterina shocked her audience once more. She remarried. The very videos that had chronicled her grief and the death of her first husband had also brought her an additional 500,000 followers. Henry McCabe. It all began on the night of September 6, 2015, in Minnesota. Henry McCabe was 31 years old, a Liberian-born immigrant, a devoted father of 2, and an auditor working for the Minnesota Department of Revenue. He had fled Liberia as a child during the Civil War, after his father was poisoned and murdered, and had built a new life in the United States. Henry was ambitious, politically minded, deeply connected to the Liberian community, and known among friends as charismatic and driven. That night was supposed to be ordinary. Instead, it became the beginning of one of the most unsettling missing person cases in recent memory. Earlier that evening, Henry attended a barbecue hosted by a man named Emmanuel D. Witnesses later said Henry had seemed eager to be there, even calling beforehand to say he felt left out. From the barbecue, he and a loose group of acquaintances made their way to a nightclub north of Minneapolis. By most accounts, Henry drank heavily, but not to the point of total incapacity. He moved around the club, spoke with different people, and at one point handed his wallet to a friend to buy drinks, an item he would never get back. Shortly after 2 a.m., Henry left the club with William Pappas Kennedy, a man he barely knew. Rather than asking to be taken home, Henry requested to be dropped off at a gas station along Pappas's route. It was a strange choice, especially considering his home was nearby. Surveillance footage later showed a man believed to be Henry exiting a car at a gas station, appearing calm and steady. Still, confusion would soon follow, as Pappas initially told police he dropped Henry at a different location altogether, only correcting his story later. Minutes later, at 2:23 a.m., Henry placed a call to his wife, Corinne, who was in California with their children. What happened during that call would become the most disturbing element of the entire case. Corinne later told investigators that Henry sounded completely unlike himself, disoriented, slurring, and incoherent. His words barely made sense. As the call continued, his speech dissolved into something far worse. Fearing something was seriously wrong, Corinne attempted to loop in Henry's brother via a three-way call. He didn't answer. The call went to voicemail, and what followed was unknowingly recorded. The final 2 minutes of Henry McCabe's voice were captured on that voicemail. What can be heard is chilling, guttural sounds, strained breathing, moans, and noises that many listeners describe as animalistic or panicked. There are no clear words, only raw distress. Some believe it sounds like an attack. Others say it resembles someone fighting for breath. Whatever it was, the audio spread rapidly online years later, becoming one of the most unsettling recordings ever linked to a missing person case. That same night, another friend attempted to call Henry and later told police it sounded as if Henry was in the middle of a violent encounter. Despite this, no emergency call was made. Corrine, shaken but unsure what she had just heard, went to sleep. She would later say she believed Henry was still alive, though she had no proof. It was Henry's brother who reported him missing the next day. Phone records revealed even stranger details. Just after the call with Corrine ended, Henry dialed a Texas number he had contacted more than 20 times that day. When investigators traced it, the number was already out of service. Even more unsettling, calls to that same number continued for days after Henry vanished, raising the question of who, exactly, was using his phone. As the investigation unfolded, inconsistencies multiplied. Statements changed, timelines shifted. A confidential FBI informant later claimed that Emmanuel D. and several men from the barbecue behaved oddly during search efforts, whispering among themselves, keeping their distance. Nothing concrete was ever proven, but suspicion lingered. Then, nearly a month later, something arrived that would deepen the mystery even further. On October 2nd, an anonymous letter was delivered to the New Brighton Police Department. It read, "Henry McCabe, his body next to water, partially buried. Need search dog to find. Witness saw burial. Scared female. Young. Asked to come forward. Can remain anonymous. Will protect." Exactly 1 month later, on November 2nd, Henry's body was discovered in Rush Lake by a kayaker. There were no visible injuries, no clear signs of violence. The autopsy could not definitively determine a cause of death due to decomposition, though drowning was ultimately listed. The letter's mention of burial was never fully explained. Some believe Henry's death was an accident. Others suspect suicide. Many within the Liberian community believe he was murdered, possibly for political reasons, possibly as part of something far darker. To this day, Henry's brother maintains that his death was no accident. No arrests were ever made, no charges filed. Whatever truly happened that night, Henry McCabe vanished into uncertainty and left behind a case that refuses to settle. The deeper you go, the less sense it makes. Robert Kimu's freestyle rap. A lively crowd gathers in a busy bar in downtown LA for what promises to be another unpredictable open mic night. These kinds of events attract all sorts of performers, from seasoned comedians to complete amateurs stepping onto the stage for the first time. You never know what you're going to get, and on this particular evening, the audience would witness something so bizarre, so unsettling, that it would leave a lasting mark on everyone in attendance. The performer's name? Robert Kimu.
Where's your funny face? Make funny face.
Interestingly, Robert wasn't some unknown face. He already had a long history on YouTube, appearing in countless videos performing skateboarding tricks alongside friends. But tonight wasn't about skateboarding. Tonight, he wanted to show off a different skill. Robert stepped onto the stage to perform a freestyle rap.
What do you mean, like, so right here, I'm gangster in this house. Fucking cut the EMP off my fucking leg and then I'm out.
Right from the start, it was rough. His words were slurred, his delivery offbeat, clearly the result of his intoxicated state. But at the end of the day, a bad open mic performance is nothing unusual. If anything, it's what makes these nights entertaining. A terrible freestyle? Embarrassing, maybe, but not exactly newsworthy. However, Robert's performance was far from over. After stumbling through the first part of his song, his lyrics suddenly took a disturbing turn.
My fucking leg and then I'm out. Motherfucker, you don't even know fucking news. I killed my and buried that in the fucking dirt. Give it out. And I'm out because the cops trying to look for me and I'm fucking trying to jump.
Through his slurred words, he rapped, "I killed my bitch and buried that bitch in the funning dirt." Then, almost as an afterthought, he muttered, "I gotta go. The cops are looking for me." For a few seconds, the room froze. Some in the audience laughed it off, assuming it was just part of the act. The MC on stage even tried to brush it aside, joking that it was an Eminem-inspired performance. But others in the crowd were visibly uneasy. Something about Robert's words felt off. And as it turns out, their instincts were absolutely right.
Well, we're inside this bar, the King Eddie bar, and this is where Camus was standing when he did this rap version. And I guess the big question is, was it a confession?
Sitting just outside the bar, parked in plain sight, was Robert's gray Prius. Inside the trunk, a shovel, fresh dirt, and, most disturbingly, fresh blood. Blood that belonged to his girlfriend, Amanda Custer. That very same day, Amanda had been reported missing. A concerned neighbor had witnessed Robert carrying her limp body, placing it into the trunk of his car before driving away. Hours later, he was here, alone, freestyling at an open mic night. At the time, it seemed like nothing more than a bizarre, drunken performance. What makes this footage so unsettling isn't just what Robert would later be convicted of, but the fact that, for years, this video existed online as nothing more than an awkward open mic clip, hiding a truth no one recognized at the time. Today, it is widely regarded as a confession. Ultimately, this footage was used in court, playing a crucial role in Robert's conviction for the murder of Amanda Custer. But despite his conviction, one tragic truth remains. Amanda's body has never been found. And if Robert's own words are to be believed, then the horrifying reality is that somewhere, buried deep in the dirt, her remains still lie undiscovered. Mr. U. It was the night of December 4th, 2003.
I'm gonna go try to get them to stop doing that.
When a police officer patrolling a park in Arlington, Virginia, was approached by a concerned family. They reported hearing what sounded like a flare gun being fired from a nearby neighborhood. The officer listened carefully, and sure enough, the distinct popping sound echoed in the distance. Following the noise, he soon arrived at the residence of 56-year-old James U. James lived alone in a duplex and had built a reputation in the neighborhood as an eccentric loner. He was known for erratic behavior, and his social media was littered with bizarre claims. He insisted that he was a victim of fraud, targeted by various government agencies, and he harbored an intense distrust of both law enforcement and federal institutions. In his mind, he was constantly under threat. His enemies, he believed, included his ex-wife, the FBI, and even his own neighbors. Many of his statements made little sense, and neither did his actions in the months leading up to that night. He had covered every window in his home with garbage bags and aluminum foil, wrapped his trees in toilet paper. And now, his behavior had escalated into something much more alarming. When officers reached his home, they saw him at a window, repeatedly firing a flare gun into the night sky. Despite their attempts to get him to stop, James ignored every command. In just 25 minutes, he had fired 41 flares.
Atlantic County Police! Stop shooting the flares! Mr. Yu!
Never offering a single word of explanation. At this point, authorities had no idea what his intentions were. Was he trying to send a signal? Was he armed with something more dangerous? They needed to get him out of the house to assess whether he posed a real threat. For hours, officers called out to him, at first calmly requesting, then forcefully ordering him to exit the house.
James, Arlington Police, come to the front door with your hands up. Do it now. We have your building surrounded.
But James never answered. With the situation at a standstill and growing concerns that he could be planning something more dangerous, police escalated their response. They brought in an armored vehicle, using it to break down the door and flood the inside of the home with gas, hoping to force James out.
James, stay away from your front door. Stay away from your front door, James.
Instead, he responded by opening fire again. But this time, he wasn't using a flare gun. Now, he was shooting with a real firearm. Luckily, none of his bullets hit the officers, but the encounter had taken a much darker turn. With the situation spiraling out of control, the police pulled back, carefully strategizing their next move. They needed a new approach to bring James into custody safely. But before they could act, everything changed.
Yeah.
Without warning, an enormous explosion tore through the house, obliterating it in an instant. The force of the blast reduced the entire structure to rubble. Investigators later uncovered that James had been stockpiling 55 gallons of gasoline in his basement, seemingly waiting for the right moment to ignite it. Speculation quickly followed. Some believed James had intended to lure law enforcement inside before setting off the explosion, aiming to take out the officers along with his neighbors, people he was convinced were plotting against him. Yet, miraculously, despite the scale of destruction, not a single police officer or civilian was harmed. The only body recovered from the wreckage belonged to just one person. And yet, for a short time, the story didn't end there. Before authorities could confirm the identity of the remains, rumors began spreading online that James Yu had somehow survived the blast. Posts appeared on what seemed to be his personal YouTube account, where someone claiming to be him insisted that the entire incident was a government cover-up. They stated that he had never been inside the house at all, and that the real story was being hidden from the public. And when looking back, there was something unsettling about the fact that, throughout the entire ordeal, there was no clear footage of him, nor had anyone ever actually heard his voice. The mystery only deepened as these claims went viral. But in the end, there was a simple explanation. The account posting these statements wasn't actually his. The username didn't match, and the comments were later determined to be nothing more than an elaborate hoax. Still, even today, some people believe there's more to the story than what was officially reported. Was James Yu the target of something bigger, or was he simply a man consumed by paranoia and isolation, his fears culminating in one final destructive act? Whatever the case, his story remains one of the most chilling and inexplicable events ever documented on YouTube. The Elaine Campione tapes. On November 17, 2010, a video appeared on the website of the National Post. It wasn't introduced as breaking news. It wasn't framed as a documentary. There was no narration, no expert commentary, just raw footage, quiet, unedited, unsettling in a way that was hard to immediately explain. The video would later become known as the Elaine Campione tapes. And once people started watching, they didn't forget it. The footage itself was not new. It had been recorded 4 years earlier, on October 2nd, 2006, inside a modest apartment in Ontario, Canada.
Hi, Serena. It's August 8th, 2006. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Serena. Happy birthday to you. Serena's 3 today. Yay! What do you think, Sophia? You sing happy birthday? No? You're 3 today. Yay! Shall we go to the living room and see if you've got any birthday presents from the birthday fairies? Yes! Okay, let's go.
At first, there was nothing alarming about it. A woman sat in front of a camera, holding it steady. Her name was Elaine Campione. She smiled softly as she sang "Happy Birthday" to her daughter Serena, who had just turned 3. A small pink bicycle stood nearby. A child's voice drifted through the room. For a moment, it felt ordinary, even tender, like a home video that was never meant to be seen by strangers. Then, something shifted. Without raising her voice, Elaine's tone subtly changed. She began speaking about Serena's father, a man named Leo. What she said didn't fit the scene that had just unfolded. She claimed that while she was pregnant, he had kicked her in the stomach. That after Serena and her younger sister Sophia were born, the abuse continued, sometimes in front of the children.
This is a deplorable, horrible, messy, filthy apartment that supposedly my 2 children and I live in, and it's just a horrible, horrible mess. Yeah. I think Diego Campione is totally in the wrong, and I hope he burns in hell for all his sins. The same as Leonardo. All I wanted to do was take care of my 2 little girls and live happily ever after the 3 years of physical, emotional, and mental abuse that I endured tremendously by Leonardo Campione, and then the past year from Anna and Diego Campione, the mental and emotional abuse, which wouldn't stop, and I had CAS keep bringing these 2 people into my life over and over again when I kept telling them the amount of mental and emotional abuse it was causing my 3-year-old daughter Serena and I and Sophia. It was horrible and uncalled for, and I want justice to my family for what they've all done to us. I cried out for help. They should have charged him for the assaults he did to me, the assaults he did to my oldest daughter Serena, and they did nothing for us.
The warmth drained from the moment. The birthday song now felt out of place, like it belonged to a different video entirely. As viewers learned more, the story grew heavier. Between April 2004 and June 2005, Leo Campione had been charged with multiple offenses, 4 counts of assault, a death threat, and bodily harm. Elaine had told authorities that he controlled her movements, monitored her calls, isolated her from her family. She said he once struck Serena while she sat in her high chair, hard enough to split her lip. Despite the charges, Leo was released on bond. He was permitted supervised visits. And when Elaine asked the court if she could move back to her parents' home in New Brunswick with the girls, the answer was no. The move would interfere with Leo's access, so she stayed. At some point, Elaine's mother came to visit. What she saw frightened her. Elaine was anxious, hyper alert. She spoke constantly about someone trying to take her daughters away. Whether that fear came from trauma, paranoia, or something else entirely wasn't clear, but it was clear that it was consuming her. And then the footage took a turn that no one was prepared for.
You can have it your way. Your wife and your daughters are dead now. We're all in heaven. I tried to overdose.
Elaine spoke calmly as she described filling the bathtub, 1 child at a time, holding them beneath the surface. The words came without hesitation, without visible emotion. 3-year-old Serena, 19-month-old Sophia. The camera didn't move. Her voice didn't shake. It felt unreal, like listening to someone describe a dream they hadn't fully woken from. Later in the same recording, Elaine turned the camera back on herself. She explained that after it was over, she tried to end her own life by overdosing. She didn't succeed. She woke up. Within hours, she was taken into custody. The woman who had been singing softly at the beginning of the tape was now calmly describing the aftermath of something irreversible. In November 2010, years after the recording was made, Elaine Campione stood trial. The jury heard about her mental health struggles. They watched the footage. They weighed intent against illness. And in the end, they concluded that while she was unwell, she understood what she was doing. She was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, with no possibility of parole for 25 years. For many, that should have been the end of the story. A legal conclusion, a closed case. But the tapes refused to stay contained within court records. Once released to the public, they took on a different life. People didn't just watch them, they studied them, replayed them, analyzed her expressions, her tone. The way the scene felt wrong long before the truth was spoken. What unsettled viewers most wasn't the confession itself. It was how normal everything looked before it. How easily fear and certainty coexisted behind a calm smile. Some saw a woman driven beyond reason by abuse and terror. Others saw the slow collapse of a mind already fracturing. And some couldn't stop thinking about the opening moments, the birthday song, the bicycle, the child's laughter, and how none of it warned what was coming. Because that's what made the footage feel different. Not the crime, but the way it hid inside something familiar. A reminder that sometimes the most disturbing truths don't announce themselves. They sit quietly in plain sight, waiting for someone to press play. That's all for today, folks. If you want to see more of this creepy content, click on the video on screen.